had a lot of deflection at the clear story roof areas is a nice feature to bring in some natural light, but the thinness of the concrete and the detailing of the concrete has caused them to create shrinkage and providing structural tension on those members to potentially part of the degradation that is occurring there with cracks and crevices there. The entrance there, just between, I'm sure between maintenance and the span on there, that it has spalled enough that it needs replacement. You have some roof details where the roof scuppers in some cases are higher than the roof itself, so that the roof can't actually drain. You actually get ponding behind there, which doesn't help it any. Some unique architectural details that just are very tough to handle, and again just allows water to penetrate into the building. So it's a reinforced concrete frame with a lot of cantilevers on there to support all the features and the floor plates that are there. But that means that the walls are infilled, that they're infill wall, that they're non-structural, that they're floating on top of the cantilever, and they move at different rates. And so you can see as this has moved, as this is the structure and that's the support, and this is a panel, floor-to-floor panel, as that moves and either from loading, from creep, from age, or just the differential movement between the two, this is opened up cracks and crevices on here that all that's holding it from water tightness is caulk. The architect that originally designed these as hard joints. He did not design them as flexible joints. I don't know. We don't know why, but that's just what he did. Same with the clear story. So this theme repeats itself at clear stories and around the building over and over again. Multiple stairs of trying to keep the flutes watertight. We also notice that, and this is probably workmanship, that the reinforcing was called to be embedded 1.5 to 2 inches, so that it would not spall and rust as water will penetrate concrete to some extent. And we're finding that some of the reinforcing has only like a 1/4 inch cover versus 1.5 or 2 inch cover as designed, in the original documents. And so the ballast, roof, and you've been up there to see that, but we have, some of the ballast that is breaking up, and this just is ballast up here. This is not part of the membrane system on here, but as the ballast is crumbling up here, it sometimes is clogging some of the roof drains. When they re-roofed it, they didn't do the building any favor. The lap here between the flashing and the new roof is only like an inch or two, so with snow buildup or wind and rain, it is helping water to get up over the top of the flashing and into the cavity on here. A lot of the cavity from the other reports that have been done, as we know from some forensic investigation, has also deteriorated and is providing, it's not wicking the water out of the building as it should, getting into between the walls. Windowsills, in some cases there's no place for the water to go, so it's sitting on the windowsills. Inside corner details with the fluted block is very difficult to caulk and seal. And so this is the only way for that to be maintained is through a caulk joint. And I just went and tried to, from the original architectural sections on the building, to try to help explain some of the thought process on this. Is that, so this is a horizontal section, as if you take a saw and cut through the wall horizontally and look down. This is a structural column. This is a structural column here. You'll see that there's no insulation at the column. There's no cavity at the column. They tried to put a membrane in there, but I know in forensic investigation that the integrity of that membrane is minimal, doesn't have the proper laps to it, and or has deteriorated. So you have a variety of conditions as you go around the perimeter of the building. You may have a little bit of cavity here on the front, no cavity in the side. As you come around the corner, You've got these 10-inch voids in there that we don't know if they're filled solid or whether they are, or whether they're just voids with flashing in there. One of the other major issues is a detail that the architect chose to do is here's the beam at the roof, and then he decided to have the split face rib stick out beyond the face of the building, and therefore providing and making a natural ledge for water to sit. This was designed as a hard joint. This was not designed as a soft joint, and because of the dissimilar materials, this joint should have been a soft joint, and it constantly is open and allows water, as rainwater, wind, and weather water come in here, it constantly gets into the cavity. So here's a view of the top of that. We got moss and mold growing up here, and they're constantly having to now rake out the hard joint and try to caulk that, but as a moving joint, it's tough to stay ahead of because there are miles of this on at the building. Similar caulk joints, again, we talked about with the split rib, just tough to caulk, tough when you have this forked shaped split rib and you've got flashings that you're trying to come in and get watertight, tough junctions in here. The architect, some of the details here show a flat flashing here, and so when the water hits the flashing, it can go east and west, so to speak, not necessarily encouraged to come out of the building. And in a lot of cases, we couldn't find the weep holes, or the weep holes have been compromised or caulked over the years, so they're not acting properly. So those are all kind of reasons why we recommended for the facade, the veneer, to come off and be rebuilt, reflashed, re-waterproofed, and put back in the report.
Can we stop right here? Because a lot of this is repetitive, and I really wanted to get to the public participation, because that's what we're here for today, is for their questions. Just as for announcements for legislators, this complete presentation is available on computer disks. Kelly has one copy now. Copies for all legislators will be in your legislative office in your mailbox by the end of the week. So, okay? And if there's time at the end, we can go back to the PowerPoint, but I do want to make sure that the public gets their chance unimpeded to see.
Yeah, that's fine. I think our thought going into it was the public hadn't had the chance to see the documents as the legislature had, and that
I appreciate your effort. Okay, Myrna, you can come forward with your first question. And this relates to the question at Physical Services on the forensic analysis that was done.
I brought forth the resolution that was tabled in Physical Services Committee, and I was told that you would be answering the question essentially that resolution looked at, and I don't know if you have it in front of you or not. I did not bring copies. I thought that you were going to give it to the gentleman. I do have it. Okay. So basically, framed as a question, my question to you is, today you've peppered your talk, as far as it's gone, with the phrase forensic investigation, and I'd like to know exactly what your forensic investigation consisted of about the structure of the building.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that, sorry. One of the things that I think, I believe it was at the end of the last session, someone, I don't remember who, asked a question about did we do forensic work on it. And our answer was we did not do a lot of invasive forensic work, meaning we did not do any demolition or things of that nature, to take things apart, except for during the tropical flood study aspect of it. So that was one of the things. But we did do quite a significant amount of forensic engineering on this. One of the things that we had done is that when we had noticed that we had an issue with the walls in relationship to what Mark was just going over, the cavities and the weeping and this and that and the other. We had spoken to Andrew Anderson, and they were the ones that in the 90s had done the repair work to the facilities. And we spoke to Beth Pothar there, and she was one of the engineers actually up on the scaffolding, look at it. And through that, we verified some of the information that we had picked off of the plans, that whereas the plans showed some cavities in some areas, they showed larger cavities in other areas, and in many areas, none at all. And when you walk around the building, you actually see that most of it appears to not have cavities. So in relationship to that, her work and relating that back to us was, absolutely forensic. The work that Fellinger Engineering did, the HVAC, the electrical, was very forensic because they looked at basically the entire system. Right? One of the things that we call forensic is anytime we're doing inspections, house inspection, building inspection, commercial inspection, it's generally looked at as a forensic engineering aspect. We're looking at the crack, we're looking at the water level, things of that nature. And far as invasive, the work that we did was we took a lot of cores from the roof, and that was during the flood study aspect. We took, some cores in the wall and some in the floor, but that was minimal. We did that to the point to ascertain certain amounts of information that we got, through advanced testing. They were the subcontractor on that. And the information that they brought back to us was, valuable in our storm report. One of the things that I think also, what's that? Yes, and that was the land report that was done in 2000. They did a lot of work on the flashing. This is a report that was done for the county, and it was actually an excellent job. Local engineering firm had done it for the county in the year 2000, and it showed a lot of the deficiencies in the flashing, photographs, things of that nature. The county, through the DPW office, gave us all the past studies. We looked at those. We utilized the information that we took out of those in an effort to try to ascertain what other engineers saw as well as what we saw. I think that the other areas that were very invasive and forensic that we did not do was what Dr. Patone did for the mold and various other physical aspects, air quality, things of those. We did include them in our storm report. Initially it was a draft, finally it was his final report. And that work was very forensic also on the mold. So one of the things I think that is a matter of terminology. What do you call forensic? Did we do a lot of invasive work? No, just the work we did with advanced testing. There was some other work done that we utilized, particularly, like I said, the land report, and also speaking to the folks that actually did the reconstruction work in the 90s. All of us are qualified forensic experts. I myself am a charter member of the National Academy of Forensic Engineers, and we do a good deal of invasive work as well, but it's rather limited because a lot of people don't want to start tearing walls down in order to determine exact items because they need to be repaired as well. But that's what we had done on a forensic level.
I want to thank you, and we are speaking slightly differently in say softness of words. If you will bear with me for just a moment, I'd like to read to you what I consider forensic,
Sure.
which is a little bit more intrusive, which is your word, than what you had done, because you had relied on other people's reports of the 90s, etc., and you didn't want to get invasive. You don't want to chunk out parts of the building. So if you just bear with me.
It's not that we didn't want to.
You didn't.
We'll knock anything down you want, believe us. In fact, that was the last part of it, is that if in fact you all want some invasive work on any particular areas, we've been more than happy to accommodate.
I'm just going to read this. It'll take about a minute and a half. I haven't timed it. Structural investigation, both historic and non-historic buildings, are a specialty of X firm and may be conducted for reasons of pathology to determine if anything is wrong with an existing structure, or they may be of a more forensic nature. Whatever the reason, We use all available technologies from visual observation to sophisticated non-destructive techniques. The end result is a comprehensive study of a particular building or element under study. Our first task is to collect as much archival information about the building as possible, its original date of construction, original architect and engineer, availability of existing drawings, particularly framing plans, column schedules and details, information on floor systems, and wall thicknesses. We interview all persons who may have knowledge of the building's structural system, including maintenance staff, former contractors, former architects, engineers, or anyone else who has written about it. We also conduct visual condition surveys without making any destructive probes. These consist of visual observations using high-power optical instruments such as telescopes, binoculars, and telephoto lenses where applicable. We note any cracks, deflections, deformations, inclinations, damage, water stains, spills, spalls, corrosions, rot, etc. Information is recorded on photographs, electronic images, and drawings. From our experience, we are often able to predict what is occurring in the structural members that may be concealed behind the architectural finishes. We have pioneered in the use of non-destructive evaluation techniques, and it's called NDE, to assist in evaluating existing structural conditions. We have made extensive use of impulse radar and acoustic wave technology, impact, echo, and pulse velocity, in order to, quote, see inside solid and dense material without actually disturbing it. Infrared thermography is a great aid in determining the presence of moisture in exterior walls and can also be used to locate hidden flues in chases. With a very minimal intrusion into structures that have hollow cavities, horoscopes, fiber optic devices have proven very useful. Magnetic detection is very useful in locating ferrous metal products. We are very sensitive to the requirements of a building owner and to the recommendations for historic buildings to disturb as little of the original fabric as possible. We can often glean a great deal of information from a very few probes. Finally, there is a study at the end with recommendations, with costs and pro and con opinions of going on with the renovation or the taking down of the building. And I guess it's because your commission was only to give us the information, which, by the way, you've done beautifully in many of the areas that, it was a huge project that you undertook. But you leave us, as the legislature, to make the final decision on what we want to do with the old girl building. And as far as I would like to see, I would like you to say, take it down or leave it up, and not just say, well, our original assignment was just to give you these facts. So I would like to have a further in-depth, intrusive, but not intrusive hardly, if you know what I mean, study of the building.
One thing that you brought up that I had neglected to mention is that there were thermal scans looking for the moisture. It wasn't done by us, it was done by Dr. Patone.
Yes, I did read that.
We utilize that, so that's one
Right.
thing. I don't disagree with your definition. I mean, your definition, does have, basically most of what we had said, except the invasive aspect of it, which we're willing to do if requested. In relationship to that, you asked us what you want, and we'll give you back what you've asked for in relationship to this. What our commission was to study, a new building versus renovation of all of the other buildings, which I think we pulled all that information together in 3 documents, counting the stormwater one, which is a little specialized. And we have that information available. And it's good for you to ask the questions, and we'll give you the answers, right? And between us, we'll come up with enough material for a decision to be made.
Well, between you and me and 300,000 other residents in Orange County, do you think that the Orange County building as it is can be fixed and used?
Well, again, I think that what our task was to put all this information. I'm trying not to hedge from it, but that wasn't what we were asked to do. We were asked to put this information together so that you have this to create that decision. personal opinions are not valid in that case.
Yeah, I think the only thing with that is you know, I mean, if you've been involved with historic buildings at all, any building can be saved. I mean, I think that no consultant, if you hire a separate consultant, if you add that to our task to do this, no consultant is going to tell you how to spend your money.
No,
So,
but...
I mean, and so we feel that we have given you and the legislature enough data to make a decision on from an order of magnitude standpoint. Is that I think if you do some of the additional non-invasive and invasive testing there, you would hope that it would validate what our assumptions have already been made. And so the reason that we disseminate this into a dollar value is for you to make a decision from a life cycle cost perspective is, do I want to spend this money?
But what you're just saying to me is you've made assumptions, and I'm supposed to make an assumption and vote intelligently on a double assumption of what to do with this building.
I guess if you don't think that our
I would like
the
to
limited amount of
see-
forensic investigation that we've done so we're the third consultant, at least the third consultant to look at the building and to kind of make some recommendations on that. So if from the data of 3 consultants and you want to do a 4th, I mean, so I think we have given you, quite a bit of assumptions on there and on doing that. So I feel like another consultant is going to validate, what our findings have been. But I mean, you could certainly go through the process of doing it. But I think from a dollar standpoint, our dollar standpoint is a good dollar for you to make a decision.
Well, at this point, do you want me to make a request to bring the...
I think that would go to physical services.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Actually, I'm going to ask the question a little bit differently, because I think she's getting at the structural viability of the building. Have you seen anything that's structurally where the building is compromised, let's say, so that structurally it's an unsafe building, which I don't think I've seen anything like that, but I think that's kind of what she was saying.
Nothing that can't be repaired. I mean, are there some of the clear story roofs that need to be taken off and rebuilt and put on there? Yes, there probably are. Has there been concrete creep out there? Is there anything from a reinforced concrete superstructure building that we know of right now that say that it's an unsafe building? No, we do not.
Okay, that's what I think she's getting at. One thing I think she's getting at. Questions from other legislators? Quickly, Mr. Turnbull.
Thank you. You can take it out of the stand. Thank you again for the presentation. I was a little disappointed that Mr. Benton stopped you. Sometimes the movie is better the second time.
The questions are more
If there's
important.
time, we'll get to it at the end, Matt. I want the public to be able to speak, because that's what people got here at 3 o'clock for today.
The first question I have is in option number 2, which is renovation, the number of $5.4 million for site improvement. Could you just give me a quick idea of what's included in that number? Because since it's an existing building, I wouldn't expect that number would be such a large number. Obviously, that includes the retaining pond and the levee.
No, it does not. That was in our storm report. One of the things that's very difficult, because we're bouncing stuff back and forth,
Right.
Between the 2 different reports, and it all sort of comes in together. What we're going over today is the draft report that we issued pre-storm. So all of these numbers in these books are pre-storm. The storm figures are, obviously post-storm. What site improvements include items such as demolition, if in fact that's what we're doing under that option. It is. It includes, asphalt, it includes curbing, sidewalks, landscaping, all of the site improvements, bringing in fill to raise the plane up, all of those type of items, site lighting, everything that you would put into, the exterior workings. It did include some additional drainage at that point. It included, upgrade to some water systems. It included some upgrade to sewer systems, things of that nature. So it's everything external to the building. Basically 5 feet out from the building is the site work.
I'm going to be focusing on option 2 and 4.
If I could just add to that, we had $500,000 in there we had costs in there for intersection upgrades as well, as part of that. It's a really healthy component of that.
I'm going to put this microphone back for a second. Okay, the next item was superstructure, almost $3 million. Could you kind of give me an idea of what was included in that number? And again, I was curious because it's an existing building, right? So superstructure.
I would say that the biggest component of the superstructure line within this estimate is...
Mike is not on.
Yes.
The biggest component of the superstructure line was two major items here. We had some patching, and we had structural reinforcing of the concrete with FRP. Those are two very large components. The third large component was a component of structural concrete repair at the areas for cantilevers, structural slab conditions.
So a lot, as I mentioned before, is that we definitely recommended that a certain amount of, we put a percentage on a certain amount of roof slabs that had to be replaced. For a lot of others, because there is definitely evidence of 40 years of saturation on the roof decks, is that we detailed in there of a reinforced Palmer that would be put in strips underneath the concrete deck to provide some additional tensile strength to the existing structure. I mean, so a lot, as he said, a big number for that is this an external reinforcement to salvage the existing slabs that are in.
Okay, the next number was for the new addition, option number 2. What is that?
To keep things apples to apples. So we were asked to look at things from a 20-year perspective. So there's only 154,000 square feet of square footage in the existing complex between divisions 1, 2, and 3. The program for those divisions say that we need 175,000 square feet. And so therefore, to satisfy the program, to keep it apples to apples, that you need then a 20,000 square foot additions between divisions 1, 2, and 3 to satisfy the program. So that's why the additions are in there, to keep it an apples to apples number.
Okay. On the roof, 2.67 million. I spent the better part of the morning just trying to, I was a commercial roofer for years, and I just spent the better part of the morning trying to figure out how you got to that number. Now, that's a hard cost number. That number includes materials, labor, and equipment. It's just baffling to me. At somewhere between, $55 a square foot for a roof. I've talked to some of the larger commercial roofers in the area. they don't know anything about that. Oh, it's
It's an all-in number, right?
Yes, our roofing number relation with other buildings because of the quantity of roof areas, the lineal footage of exterior wall condition on the roof areas, and the utter complexity of the roof system. That being said, you just can't use a square foot number as a square foot number on this particular roof system. It doesn't work well.
And it was,
Um,
go ahead.
So we kind of looked at this as parts and pieces and square foot numbers to try to build up a system that we could use as a gauge for pricing. We looked at the square footage of the area, the quantity of roof scuppers, the quantity of each of the different components of the roof system to try to build a unit price that made some sense. On top of that, you've got the existing roof ballast which needs to come off, and the new system to come down. And it's just not a very simple, clean roof to price and to do the work.
We would, the land report, the 2000 land report is a very good report, and I would recommend, you go, through that as a kind of a second opinion if you want. But so the roof area of the three buildings is somewhere between, around 55,000 square feet. So in 55,000 square feet, there are 80 major roofs and 17 minor roofs. So 55,000 square feet, chop that up into 80 roofs. So as a roofer, you can understand that, all the roof drains, per current code, there aren't enough roof drains that are in there. They got to be cut in and put into there. It's, a lot of linear footage, thousands of linear feet of flashing, counter flashing that has to be installed and put in there. So,
yeah, basically what I did was I used industry standards, and then I doubled it, and I still didn't get to within halfway of your number. So again,
think of a typical 50,000 square foot roof would probably have two roofs, maybe three roofs. I mean, just trying to take a standard and trying to, the architectural feature of this building is to have this playful cascading, elements on the building, and that's the thing is I don't think typical rule of thumb apply to this roof.
let me continue.
Matt, are you almost done? Because we're at 4 o'clock already.
I have quite a bit more.
Okay, then you can wait.
Another day?
Yeah, or tonight, no problem if you're coming back tonight, or any of our legislative regularly sessions. I just want to get the public, it's already 4 o'clock and we're technically behind schedule from where I really wanted to be by about 15,
Thank you,
20
gentlemen. I'll be
minutes.
back. By the way, Mr. Fusco, I met your son. He was extremely helpful and good guy. It's always nice to hear. Proud of him.
You already had one shot at the microphone a couple weeks ago, so. Okay, now to the public participation. First up is Mr. Alan Seidman.
Watch your step.
You can stay right at the microphone, just announce yourself for the public record.
You look good with the print on your face.
Hi, my name's Alan Seidman, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm a former chair of the Orange County Legislature, and when I became chair in 2001, one of the first things I did, actually, the first night I was chairman, I woke up in the middle of the night and drew up a sketch plan of what a new government center should look like. Next day I went to the county executive with it and gave him a whole bunch of reasons as to why I thought we should do that. Not a lot has changed, except conditions have gotten worse. The economy is worse, which means that the borrowing rate is better. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so I won't talk about whether we're talking about beauty or an eyesore. We'll leave that to individual opinions. But in 1990, when I was a rookie legislator in the first term, and on physical services, and it was either 90 or 91, we were given a tour of the building where we went into the judges' chambers. And because of the way the building is constructed with vertical concrete with an overlay roof such as this, when the walls settled, there was one judge's chamber where you could literally put your hand through the wall at the ceiling level. The building has, thank you. The building, we lost the microphone. Could be. This is the new building. This is the new building.
Thank you, Alan. Sit down.
It's a subtle hook.
All right. It is my opinion, and it was my opinion back then, because of the county's rate.
Alan, the man is here, so if you want to wait for just a minute,
That's okay.
he's the man.
Alan, I saw foot and go. I don't want that one.
Hello? Okay, here we are. That wasn't for me, was it, Chris? We have the opportunity to build at a time when the borrowing rates are very low. We have a time, rates for materials and construction costs are always going to go up. And if we delay this by putting this off and just doing a Band-Aid repair, when you really have to replace it and your kids are paying for it, it's going to be a nightmare. The numbers that we heard today, and I scribbled here, so I'm having a little problem with that. My glasses on, reading my own handwriting. But some of the numbers we heard earlier, where the estimate for a new building is in the $80 million range, $80 to $90 million. I'm not sure what the county executive is going to announce, but that a 67.2 number was what we heard today for repair. And keep in mind, and I think the legislature is told, but I'm not sure what the real number is. I think bonding on a new building is 30 years, and a repair is significantly less. I'm not sure exactly what the number is, but probably 20 years. The significant cost of the downtime and temporary relocation that the county employees are going through, along with the decrease in efficiency, is unbelievable. Rehab would be an improvement over the current building, but it would leave some of the same inefficiencies in design and the layout. If you think about fixing up the current building, what's going to happen when you start ripping off that roof, and then you truly find out, and Myrna was asking the questions about forensic investigation, what happens when you rip off that roof and you find out what the real water damage is behind to the concrete and to the infrastructure of that building? To build an energy efficient building, there was a Honeywell study done in 2009. You can save up to 45% of your energy cost per square foot. Current building was designed before there were any energy costs, and that's probably why you have those pretty 30-foot plus high roofs in there that you have to heat the entire space, even though you're only using the first 8 feet of from the floor up. The current building never did fit with the historic stature of Goshen. I remember talking for many years with my old friend Dave Party, who was a former supervisor at Goshen and then became a legislator, about how he was one vote away from blocking that design. In the old Board of Supervisors, there were 33, and I remember Dave telling me it won by 17-16. There are many different roofs, as we heard. I think it was 97 when you had the majors and the minors and so on and so forth. And that upkeep, if you repair it, that upkeep is going to be forever. New building would reduce, from one of the previous studies, CO2 emissions by an estimated 45%. The aging mechanical equipment will require very expensive replacement if the new building is not approved. You also have the opportunity of creating 400 construction jobs. You would create a building that is totally compliant with ADA, American with Disability Act requirements. can merge numerous government functions into one central location. Savings on building maintenance and operating costs would multiply every year going forward. As our current energy costs rise at home, they rise for the county too. And again, going back to those 30-foot high interior ceilings, this is just a nightmare that's going to be prolonged. So I urge the legislature to go ahead and approve the building sooner rather than later. You're going to put some of your local tradespeople back to work that need jobs. As far as the cost, your children, my children, and people that live here, when you take the fact that the building is not significantly more than a repair and you combine it over an additional 10 or 15 years, whatever that number is, the annual cost to you, the taxpayer, is going to be fairly level. It won't be a significant difference. You're going to have a new building that runs cheaper, so your operating costs are going to be less on an annual basis. So to me, it's a no-brainer, but then again, whenever anybody says no-brainer, they always look at me first anyhow. But thank you for the opportunity to address you, and good luck in your deliberations.
Thank you very much, Alan. Next up is Village of Goshen Mayor Kyle Roddy.
Good evening, everyone.
Turn it on. If you turn it
There it is. Good afternoon, everyone. Third time's the charm. All right, good afternoon. Thank you for letting me be here today to speak to you. I am here today wearing my mayor hat as the mayor of the Village of Goshen, not to speak on my personal opinion on the issue, but to convey a requirement and a need on behalf of our village. Village of Goshen has been the county seat for many years now, and we look forward to being the county seat for many years to come. We're proud to be the county seat. Part of that is a relationship. That relationship is very, very beneficial to the Village of Goshen in a lot of ways. In some ways, though, it's challenging having a lot of properties off the tax rolls. But as a result, our village is strengthened by the county in a number of ways, by the merchants downtown being supported by our county employees, by traffic coming through the village to go to county outfits. In the aftermath of the hurricane, I would want to thank the county and the county executive for acting fast and getting county employees back in Matthew Street fast and at a very efficient rate, given the challenges. However, a number of months later, our downtown merchants are still facing challenges. And I know that the county executive and the county legislature is aware of this. I ask today that we do anything we can to possibly expedite this process. A lot of times in government, we've found that you have a committee to talk about a process, to do a report, and the report will talk about forming a committee. And I would just ask that we avoid that at all costs this time. Our merchants were already being challenged prior to the hurricanes, and even more so now. It's a great relationship between the village and the county, and I'm proud to be the mayor of the county seat. But we need to do everything that we can to maintain the positives of this relationship moving forward. The faster that we can make a decision on this issue, the faster we put our local men and women back to work, and we make the Village of Goshen whole again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next up is Michael Gatos.
Good afternoon. Well,
Takes 10 seconds for it to come on. Turn it on.
are we on?
Yes.
Okay. I want to thank you for this opportunity. My name is Michael Gatos, and I do live in Orange County. I represent the Hudson Valley Building Trades and the manager for Local 417 Ironworkers. Let's face facts. This building, we've been dancing around for a long time whether we should build one or renovate. Nobody in this room would want to just build a new building for the sake of an eyesore. We know that. But I'll tell you what, anybody in this room, if you had cancer, would you take half of it out if you had a chance? I don't think so. You'd take it all out. And that's what we got here. We got a cancer. What you see on the outside of the walls, that's obvious. And what this lady said, when you dig it up and you start looking, you're going to have a mess. I know. I have a degree in architecture, and I don't claim to know it all,
But I can guarantee if you empty that building out or tear off the roofs and get behind those walls, you are going to find cancer. And if you don't remove it, it's just going to keep coming back. So like you said, you can renovate any building. Just like a car. You fix the rust, you take it all out. If you just put a Band-Aid on it, it's going to come back. At what cost can you put a Band-Aid on this building? Is what I look at. I mean, we can build any new building. The Hudson Valley Building Trades is going to build it on time and on budget. That's not a problem. But if we don't look at this problem and get to the root of it and take a good look at it, those employees that work in there, they're there every day. So you come in and visit and you breathe what you breathe, that ain't going to affect you really. You won't find out. You'll be dead before you got cancer or whatever that lung illness may be. But if you're in there every day, believe me, if you got mold, you want it removed, and you have to remove it all. Just like your house, due to a flood, and you don't see it until it's too late. It's inside. By the time it gets outside, it's manifested tremendously. So you wouldn't want your house to be like that. And this building, you know, a lot of people work there. And if they have an ailment, believe me, the way these days are, people are so happy too. You have one case of an illness. I don't care if they got it there or they got it in their backyard. They're going to say they had it there. And it will happen, believe me, I'm telling you. You hate to think like that, but you have to fix the problem. And if the problem is that big, and from what I see, there are structural problems in there. And that's what I deal with every day. It takes years and years to manifest. But if you don't fix the problem completely, you know, put a Band-Aid on there again, it's gonna last for a while. So if you don't work in that building every day, and you live here, you know, and you're not in that building, and you're not experiencing all those, you know what, I'd love for you to have an office in there. I'll find a good room that they didn't touch. We'll put you right in there. Because you wouldn't want to be in there, I'll tell you. I've been in some of it. And the courts are a mess. Now, these people cannot do their day-to-day, you know, their day-to-day work. And being across county and having to fax stuff, whatever, when they could be right here and turning stuff over, it's not efficient at all. So it's not cost-effective, I feel, to put a Band-Aid on this building at all. So if we don't act on this, I feel the bottom line is you can't put a dollar amount on anybody's health and what the risks that this potentially has. But there's no doubt that, you know, there's many violations, fire codes, handicap, those things are all in there too. But to just ignore the problem we got, you know, I think you'd be doing the county and the employees there an injustice. So I say, yeah, go ahead, do your innovative studies. When you tear that wall apart, you just might as well work from the front to the back. You'll end up right in the front. And that roof, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think so. You know, I've seen these water problems before, and they just really just keep spinning and spinning. But like I say, my opinion, because I do live in Orange County, and I know people that work there, and I know the mess it's created, and all these surveys we do and all the studies we do, you can just spend as much money as you want, but eventually you're going to come to a dollar figure that you're going to have to live with. You pay now or pay later. If you pay later, you're going to be spending twice as much money. So I hope that everybody does their due diligence, and that's what you should do. But at the end of the day, I hope you vote yes for a new building. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Next up is Lynn Sion. I think I said that right, maybe?
That was very good.
Should have known that.
Thank you very much. My name is Lynn Sion. I'm the Executive Director of the Goshen Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, gentlemen, for your hard work, but my comments aren't directed to you at all. My comments are directed to the legislators, and first I want to thank you for holding these hearings. It's very important for the community to be able to say what the effect of your decision will have on us. From the Chamber, we're not taking a point of view as far as to whether to renovate, to rebuild. We just want you to make a decision. We've enjoyed a tremendous relationship with the legislature and the county executive. The county executive has spoken at our breakfast many times, and the legislature was kind enough to allow us to have our farmers market there last year. So we appreciate that very much. And from the Village of Goshen's point of view, we have a very symbiotic relationship with you. You are off our tax rolls. We're about 52%, I believe, Mayor Roddy, 51 to 52% off the tax rolls. So it's very, very important that whatever traffic comes in helps to support the community. Right now, our downtown is suffering. We had a very difficult time with the loss of the hospital. We had a very difficult time with the economy. And then we had our own flooding issues down, if you remember, Greenwich Avenue. We had front loaders pulling people out of some of the houses. Goshen Sunoco was underwater. It's been very difficult. And now we have the loss of the county building because it's empty. It basically stands as new testimony to a devastating flood. And we have the loss of our DMV. And I thank County Clerk Donna Benson for all of our hard work to try to get it to come back at some point. And I understand the restrictions that the state has placed on having a temporary DMV. But the DMV, the traffic from the DMV that comes in, generates a tremendous amount of revenue for our downtown businesses. Tremendous. The takeout for our restaurants is down. You may go in there and you may see that the tables are filled, but the takeout, the number of people saying, hey, I'm getting a license or I'm turning in my plates. While I'm down here, let me grab a sandwich at Elsie's or Howell's or Goshen Gourmet. Those people aren't there anymore. Those people are waiting online in Middletown. Not to take anything away from Middletown, but this is Goshen. So I would urge you very, very strongly to make a decision. Because from our point of view, no matter which decision you make, there's going to be construction workers there. There's going to be people coming back to our downtown. We want to have a nice building. One of the things that I'm finding now, one of my biggest obstacles, is we're trying to attract business into Goshen. I can't say, here is the county building. It's a vacant building. Who would want to come in to a community where there's a vacant building that's full of mold? Nobody. It's very, very difficult for us to even attract business. So I would urge you very strongly, as you deliberate, please don't put the decision off. I understand the need for studies, and I appreciate the diligence with which you have done that. There's a need for process. There's definitely a need for process. But I would ask you, you have your studies. Please do not delay any longer, because there is a community that is hanging in the balance with what you're doing. There is a community that is waiting for a decision. There are businesses that are literally hanging at the brink. These are people who live in Goshen. These are not people who commute up from Westchester or people who come in from Dutchess County. These are people who have lived here for years. They're raising their families here. They're paying salaries. They're paying their taxes. And they own the businesses in Goshen. And their ability to continue to do that depends on the legislature being able to make a decision. Please seriously consider that when you have these deliberations, that you're talking about the lives of people, not just split-face concrete and an architect, but there's people who are depending and relying on a decision that you make. The other thing I would ask is, County Clerk Donna Benson, again, anything we can do to help you relocate or bring a DMV back here temporarily, we're here for you. But and the other thing is that if you do have something, regardless of what you do, there will be construction workers here. Elsie's will be able to supply sandwiches. We all have our own personal opinions, but I appreciate very much the fact that you're doing this for us, but please consider the Village of Goshen. We've had a wonderful relationship with all of you, and we look forward to having a county building that's clean, that's done cheaply, that's done with the people of Orange County in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up are two individuals. We're going to go a little bit out of order just for convenience. Chuck Mitchell and Doug Hovey.
You have to turn your microphone around.
That's all right. Okay, good afternoon. Thank you, Lee. And thank you, members of the engineering team who provided us with some pretty insightful information relative to the architectural integrity of the building. My name is Doug Hovey. I'm the Executive Director of Independent Living Incorporated. We're a disability service organization, and we have offices both in Newburgh and in Middletown and in Monticello. I was involved in a study of the government center back in the 90s in partnership with the national ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act consulting firm called McGuire and Associates. And what we did was conducted something called a self-evaluation and transition plan, which is required under the Americans with Disabilities Act for every municipality to have one of those plans. And what we found was that this particular building was essentially functionally obsolete, and this was back in the 90s. What we did was made a series of recommendations to try to improve the level of access. And we added several small electrical devices, lifts. We tried to improve ramp areas. But the end result was these were Band-Aid solutions that made the building, it still was very much inaccessible. If you were to look at issues related to people with physical disabilities, the building is largely inaccessible. It's actually humiliating to try to navigate through that building, and I've tried to do it several times. In fact, in 1988, I was summoned to serve as a jury duty, in jury duty. And when I showed up that particular day, I was unable to get in to serve. Subsequent to that, I was told that I would be taken off the list. I insisted that I wanted to serve, but I was just unable to get into the building. But for people with mobility impairments, the building is really largely inaccessible. For people who are able to walk, the building has its challenges. For people with limited hearing or hearing impairments, the building, acoustically speaking, is not very accessible. People with low vision or visual impairments. We recently had an occasion to assist 2 individuals with visual impairments through the building, and the comments that we heard from them were just astounding and just confirming of the lack of accessibility. The entryways into the building itself, into that corridor that leads to the singular elevator that doesn't serve the building very well. Those entryways are not very accommodating. The slopes for the path of travel. When you park in that parking lot, the distance for one is not acceptable. It's too far from the actual parking space to the building, but the slope of that actual ramp is not accessible. It's not up to code. I also want to mention that the county building, in effect, is in violation of the ADA. It's in violation of Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, as well as the New York State Uniform Fire and Building Code. So, let me preface that in addition to this building being functionally impractical for people who have ability to ambulate and impossible for people with disabilities, it's clearly in violation of federal and state laws for accessibility as they relate to architecture and program access. I know the government center was conducted long before these laws were passed, before Section 504 of the Rehab Act, before the Americans with Disabilities Act, but the reality is we are required to comply with these laws. There's no such thing as a grandfather clause. So even given consideration to the idea of retrofitting or renovating this building and bringing it back to what it was a few years ago prior to these hurricanes, the building is still functionally obsolete. It just makes no sense to put a lot of investment into a building that is not going to be accessible. And I would just say also, as far as preserving the historical relevance of the building, in my view, the historical relevance that the building has really falls under the category of lessons learned, and we should just not continue to invest in buildings that are completely inaccessible and not accommodating for all of our citizens. So I would strongly give consideration to a new plan, a well thought out new plan, a building that makes sense for all of our citizens, including people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Also, the county executive has told me that this room is ADA compliant. Through this door, there is a ramp. I just didn't know it. So
that's all right. We did know it, but that's okay. We can do it from up here. For the sake of the record, my name is Chuck Mitchell. For the sake of full disclosure, I do work for the county. I'm the Commissioner of Consumer Affairs and Weights and Measures for the County of Orange. I've had this position for about 4.5 years now. Prior to that, I worked for the City of Middletown for about 18 years in different governmental positions, but suffice it to say, I've been involved in government for 22 plus years. I've been a wheelchair user for 29 years. Piggybacking on what Doug said, I worked inside the government center. When he used the word humiliating, he wasn't kidding. Okay, to try to get around that building on a good day is extremely difficult when you're in a wheelchair. Mobility impairment is not something that is just to see whether you have some type of hearing disability or visual disability. At some point, you're going to learn that you need to have as full access as possible. And that's what we're looking for here. The building itself is not accessible. It's not accessible to people that can walk. It's a horrific thing. I've seen people trip on the steps. I've seen people fall down the steps. Okay, going in that hallway, operating the doors. Yeah, there's a power button on the door, but the doors are very old. They're very heavy. It does not flow. Okay, the ramp, like Doug said, is not to compliance. As hard as our DPW crews have tried, and believe me when I tell you they have tried, they've gone above and beyond to make these buildings accessible. They blew a hole out of the wall in the annex building so that I could work there. And they did it right. They did it well, okay? And I give them kudos for that. And that took more than just a caulk gun to do, by the way, okay? What I'm trying to let you understand here is that it doesn't make much sense, in my opinion. Yeah, oh, by the way, I live in Orange County, okay? I pay taxes in Orange County. It doesn't make much sense to throw a lot of money at something that is just not going to work. The building doesn't work functionally now. It's not going to work functionally. I challenge anybody that doesn't believe us, take a day in a wheelchair and roll through it with me, and you'll see what I'm talking about. The building just does not do it. You're throwing good money after bad if you don't vote to build a new county government center, and I urge you to do so. Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Chuck. Next up is Matt Guy.
Yeah, I got you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, get up anyway. I'm that guy. I'm actually from Local 7, Marble Terrazzo Union. And just listening to everybody here, and when I first bought my house, I put a Band-Aid on it because I didn't have the money to fix it. And being in the tile business and working with water and in bathrooms, you know what? Hearing about all the water problems in this place, it's crazy because I had a family member that had Legionnaire's disease. She worked in an office that had water problems, and she passed away at 54, and she couldn't breathe. And this is what you're dealing with. You want to put a Band-Aid on something, this is what you're going to get.
More direct.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, just a little more direct.
I don't know. I live in Orange County. It's a sore ride coming by here. I'm in Goshen a lot. You know what? It's a shame to look at that building just sitting there. Nobody's in it. Let's get people to work. Let's do it safe. Let's knock it down, and let's rebuild this county. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Frank Carbone Jr.
Good day. My name is Frank Carbone Jr. I'm from the town of Newburgh. And probably should tell everybody that I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. My job, I guess, when I was in industry, working for a company with an acronym of IBM, I won't tell you what they really were. Anyway, what it really meant. But my job there was the East Fishkill site shutdown coordinator for facilities engineering and services. And so over that time, my job was to bring the different disciplines, the different engineering disciplines, and mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, maintenance people, operations people together to plan the shutdowns of buildings. Excuse me. So at that time, that was in the early 90s, late 80s. We had a lot of activity going on there, a lot of new buildings going up. IBM changes things day by day. Things change because of the semiconductor computer industry changes. Just a lot of change. I see a lot of familiar faces here of guys that worked in Fishkill. But anyway, it was a very interesting job. So my job, my responsibility was to bring everybody together so we can shut a building down, do what work we had to do over a holiday shutdown. Could be 3 days, 4 days, or even sometimes between holidays. Shut it down safely, do the job, and then bring it back up safely so manufacturing or research and development can get in there and do their job and get back to work. Otherwise, we lose a lot of money. One big project we did was and the site at that time was 6 million square feet of buildings, manufacturing, research and development, warehouse, and so forth. It's a very complex industry, as you all know, and buildings can be very complex, high-tech buildings. One project we had was a 1 million square foot roofing project, replacing an old, original built-up roof. You know, familiar with that? It ends up being a gravel on top of asphalt, and we upgraded that to a membrane. The membrane that was used was a polyisobutylene membrane, and it's probably at that time was probably the best you can get. But it was a 1 million square foot building, probably more complex than what we're talking about here. And it was done in such a way that the building didn't even have to be shut down. And there was far more penetrations and different obstructions in the roof than what we're seeing here. This roof probably has a minuscule percentage of the penetrations in that building in Fishkill. As far as I know, it's still there, and they've even done more roofs there. Actually, there's more than 6 million square feet now. There's about 8 million square feet. So there's even some of the new roofs, they're using the membrane system, not just the black, but a white, like a cream color. But it was very interesting. I do also have about 20,000 hours and many years of hands-on experience in one of Paul Rudolph's creations right across the river in Dutchess County. But it's a much bigger building, much more complex building than what we're talking about here. And that roof has a membrane roof on it. And the building has been changed over the years. It was originally a research and development building where a lot of the high-level IBM people were, a lot of the scientists were. And but we did visit it not long ago, a group and a couple of folks from the legislature. And what they're doing there is changing. They had one whole, they don't call this particular building, they don't call the different sections divisions. They called them pavilions. So there was 4 pavilions, a lot of glass in the building. So what they're doing today, they're changing things. They're retrofitting from a wet type process of research and development. One whole pavilion, I think, on the 3rd floor was probably, I'm going to guess and say maybe 30,000 square feet, maybe more. That was completely gutted. The 10-foot ceilings were still there. They went in and put half partitions up. Everything was retrofitted these half partitions where they were 10-foot partitions. And now there was people there, very quiet. And we walked through there. It was all carpeted. The partitions were carpeted, so it was very quiet. Anyway, that's not what I was going to say today, but I started hearing what other people were saying. I said, I think I better throw this out there. But anyway, there was mention of moisture control. We keep hearing about moisture. Folks, there's compounds today that we could use to protect the concrete from moisture infiltration. And there's new compounds out there today that we can make expansion joints leak-proof. I don't think there's ever been an application on this concrete in this building. Anyway, I've got my report here. You don't need to take notes. I've got a copy for you. But what I'm going to say is it's obvious the old adage of, quote, putting the cart in front of the horse, end of quote, has been playing out in the saga of the Orange County Government Center in the village of Goshen. Myriad questions and comments abound about what to do with the 42 years young solid concrete and steel building that by all visible accounts has been severely neglected for many years. What we witness on the surface is most likely more severe in those behind-the-scenes areas and vital building services and equipment, stuff like air handlers. The most important question I have today may not be answered by these consultants. Perhaps Orange County Executive Eddie Diana is the only one with an answer. That question is, why was the entire building, its equipment, its roof systems, and its environs neglected for so many years? That's the question that needs to be answered. And there's only one person. A recent Times Herald Record report, I think it was Saturday, in the Times Herald Record, mentions a series of important questions submitted by reporter Chris McKenna have yet to be answered by the consultants. It seems the consultants referred the questions to Orange County Executive Diana. Considering the cost of consultants' reports, numerous meetings, and county employee hours, what are the bottom line and latent costs to the taxpayers of Orange County for this saga fiasco? Will the average Orange County homeowner or small business owner be able to afford the increases in property taxes when many can't keep their heads above water now? Will the homeowners of the village of Goshen be informed of all expected and potential impacts to their village if Orange County Executive Diana gets his want, not a need, new 333,000 square foot building and parking garage that'll house 3 times the number of employees and visitors it served before the building was shut down? What will the small side streets in the village experience when drivers attempt to circumvent Main Street traffic? Will they need to close those quiet side streets to through traffic and trucks and create one-ways and shortcuts and add new traffic lights and so forth to prevent abuses, noise, diesel smells, additional noise, and vehicular accidents? It's my opinion that consultants are serving as a sounding board complaint department between the public and the county executive. After all is said and done, and with much invaluable time and manpower expended, and if the Orange County executive gets his way, the new building option is chosen, and construction drawings go out to bid, we will then know the real costs of this project to Orange County taxpayers. Will we then know all of the other impacts, for example, environmental, social, economic, quality of life, and impacts and hardships that'll surely be more widespread than we can imagine at this point in time to other important county infrastructure, school buildings, education, care of the sick and infirmed, and so forth. In closing, I think I'd like to see a clarification regarding the last meeting. It was mention of the detail on the parapet and flashing. And it was mentioned that by one of the consultants, I think it might have been Mark, that the split-face block would have made flashing the parapet more difficult. And I'm just asking if the consultants could please explain why it would be so difficult. And thanks for listening and acting, and have a good day. Good night. That's the only question.
Thanks, Mike. You said that was I'll give this to the clerk of the legislature, and all legislators would then be able to find it in their mailboxes. Mark, you want to talk the last question about the flashing?
Yeah, I don't know if you were here. Were you here earlier when we did some of the PowerPoint?
Well, I saw part of it, but I'm referring to the previous meeting. I think you mentioned, and I got it in my notes, that you'd have difficulty flashing the parapet because of the split-face block. I'm sorry. Because of the split-face block.
Yeah, the very top of the parapet. I mean, I tried to show the detail here where the structural concrete above is behind the block. The block actually sticks out beyond the parapet. It actually sticks beyond the structural reinforcing. So you have a perfect ledge there that water sits on. And then that ledge that is there also is a hard joint. It's not a soft joint. and it should be a soft joint, and they've spent time caulking it. So if you came up with some kind of a flashing detail, you'd have to then come up with some kind of a flashing detail to salvage what's there, to come all the way over the top of the concrete, over the top of the fluted block, and somehow try to have a drip edge on the face of the fluted block in order to try to stop that water condition.
Yeah, but the just below the flashing, that seems to be on a concrete parapet, and it seems to be like maybe 10, 12 inches of smooth concrete, and then the split face block is below that. So, but the fact is, and I think you mentioned that the concrete protectant only lasts 5 years, but it's very inexpensive. And
any kind of spray on is in the research we've done with that. Any kind of spray on is only going to be, as you may know, 3 to 5 years.
Well,
you got to recoat it, but any kind of spray on is not going to seal a crack. I mean, the cracks that we showed in the photos, the cracks that are in the report, any kind of sealer, any kind of approved sealer is going to help be a water repellent to the block, to the concrete. It's going to be a water repellent. It is not going to solve the problem with the cracks, and the problem with the building is the cracks.
That's understandable. I understand that. The cracks could be another issue.
I think the cracks are.
I just want to leave you with one thing, and the folks here. The way this building is laid out and everything, and with my experience, I believe that this project can be done in phases so that it's not upset. The other thing I didn't mention is the way the building was treated after it became saturated, or so-called saturated, most homeowners would quickly remove everything they could remove out of the building, put it out next to the curb like it was done. This didn't happen in this building. And they said, well, we couldn't open the windows, but the fact is you can remove those windows. And while you had it out, put one high-energy, high-efficient window in there. But they could also bring in these rolling HVAC units, rolling generators to operate the building and get that building purged from one end to the other. The fact is, it sat there with nothing being done except maybe running the internal units. Anyway, thanks for listening. Have a good day.
Thanks, Frank. Also, I do believe that next Monday, the 5th, will be the county executive's presentation, where I'm sure he'll answer some of your questions, if not all. And also, I have requested personally a report from Mr. Lee on a history of replacements, maintenance, repairs, and such to the building, so that we'll have some documentation for people, because I don't believe it's been neglected. Next up, Mr. Fromage, you said you wanted to really speak this evening. Can I ask you if you would speak this evening, because I know your questions were extensive, and I have about 5 people signed up for after you. Is that okay?
I have more questions as a result. The only thing I would ask is, I think in the fairness of the spirit of full disclosure, Val Seidman is here. He would tell everybody what his current occupation is. Yes.
Full disclosure, he is currently the head of Construction Contractors Association in Orange County, and he's also a former legislator and chairman of this legislature, for full disclosure as well. And thank you for easing the format. Next up, Mr. Peter Berman.
Hi, thanks for having this hearing and giving everybody a chance to speak. My name is Pete Berman. I live in Warwick. I have a real estate development and construction business. Our office is in Goshen. Everybody keeps saying full disclosure. So we don't do public or municipal work. So we don't have any interest in building it. No matter how many times you ask, the answer is no. But there are a couple of quick points that have come up just from reading the paper, and I attended one of the presentations at the chamber. And it was interesting to hear the gentleman who worked for IBM talking about remodeling versus rebuilding and repairing roofs. And I can tell you, as a developer, as somebody who owns the building, and it's my money, and we have total control, usually once you reach about 50% of the projected renovation cost, take it down and start over. Unless you have some unique situation that prevents you from doing that, if there's some real value that's in the building, when it's your own money, from your pocket, you will always make the choice. Because renovations can never be as well budgeted as remodels. I mean, the design professionals work in 2 dimensions. They try to use computers to go up to 3. But the fact is, everybody in the building who knows about construction knows particularly with remodels, your contingencies are much wider. They have to be. The other important thing is, through a turn of unfortunate circumstance, we had an opportunity to really rebuild our whole office from the ground up. And we learned an important lesson. No matter how many consultants can help you transition to working off-site and using GoToMeeting and other technologies like Skype, having a good floor plan that's well thought out is something that you can't put a value to easily. I'm sure there are smarter people than I that could figure out lost wages from people traveling around a building. But we saw it with our team when we were able to reorganize our office, putting people who work together in the same area of the building, putting the printer, for example, in our small office in the middle. These things had a drastic difference in people's workflow. And it's important to think about that. And the most important thing is really to act quickly. I think that this process is great. It's great to have public hearings, but the legislature and the county executive, we elected you. We trust you to make the right decision. And I think the key to that sentence is to make the right decision and make it quickly, because we see it. The rental market for office space in Orange County changed drastically, a few months ago when this happened. And it's time to get that back on track and make a decision. I think it's also important to consider that when you're doing the building, to really make it a place where we can represent the county well. I know as relatively newcomer to the county, when I went to the first meeting for the electrical licensing board, it was in a conference room in the county executive suite, and I was kind of wondering what the garbage pail was on the middle of the table for. I thought we were going to throw something in there, but it's catching the water dripping in. Obviously, that's not a good thing. So if there's one point, it's really to make the decision quickly and move through the process.
Thanks, Peter. It was either for the water or beer pong, I'm not sure. Next up, Peter Greck.
No other criteria should be allowed to exceed this one goal, to serve the people and to do it efficiently. That's a major thing. As a structure intended to house government offices, has some glaring insights. So the question remains, can the design flaws be remedied with the existing structure? So, let me give you some story from my past. When I was a little kid, I accompanied my mother into the government building. She had to visit one of the offices there. And as anyone who's visited the place for the first time might expect, we got lost. We got hopelessly lost. We wandered around for quite a while. And we're from Port Jervis. We had to travel 30 minutes there, 30 minutes back. If suppose a working person only had a couple hours at the end of their day to visit the center, if they can't accomplish their job in the time allotted that they've allotted during their day to get the job done at the office building, then the citizen has to come back and redo the process once they've figured out how to get to the place they're actually trying to get to. Years later, I visited the office building myself on some other errand, and as an adult, I'm good with maps. I'm pretty competent with reading the floor plans of most buildings. I got lost. And I have a technical degree. I'm not exactly a dog. So for a government that doesn't care about its people, the Rudolph building would be an accurate reflection of that. What is your time worth? Now ask yourself, what is the time of your citizens worth? As some people know, rats are actually more capable with mazes than humans are. I guess that's one of our shortcomings. Well, give the building to the rats, I say. Give us a really well-designed building that helps us, the citizens. As a work of art, the current government succeeds Its intimidating visual aspect reeks of unapproachability and instills the already downtrodden a heightened sense of despair. What the exterior doesn't accomplish, the interior maze does. The worn of hallways are capable of breaking those who may be desperately trying to cope in an already too complex society. And the government can be pretty complex to the ordinary person. They don't need the additional hassle of trying to wander around through your government building. Okay, and while that's the commentary portion, I have a few questions for the experts. Well, one more comment. It was mentioned that there's at least a mile of joints that have to be constantly caulked. And you got to budget in maintenance costs to this old building. They're constant. It's no easy task to keep up with it. And apparently, from what I've read in the Times Herald Record, that we're saving money by renting office space outside the current government center from the utility cost that the government center was, apparently is hemorrhaging heat. That's my best guess. Because I can't imagine the electricity contributing substantially to that utility cost. So my questions are, I'll just go through them all at once and you can answer them as you see fit. What's the outside surface area of the building and the total floor space? And of that total floor space, what portion of that is actually dedicated office space? And I don't mean like the endless hallways, the actual office space that people use. And the current insulation R values of the walls, I don't even know if, I didn't hear you mention anything about insulation, except the air gap. I guess they're air cavities. And the ratio of insulation to any heat conduits that may be going through the insulation, such as concrete and steel, which are penetrating the insulation for structural reasons. And I guess that would about wrap it up for my questions.
Yeah. A couple of the answers would be, from what we know from the wall sections, that there is 1 inch of insulation in the building, which would probably be equated to an R5. Now that's just the insulation. That's not the composite wall. The composite wall would of course be higher. 154,000 square feet is of the 3 buildings, divisions 1, 2, and 3. We don't have that broken down in terms of circulation versus office space. We did not take the time to do that net to gross, analysis, for that. Total wall square footage of surface. Do you have a guess at that, or?
I just pulled up one item here, the split roof masonry veneer, which is only a portion of the exterior. That was just under 100,000 square feet of that component. Not to mention the windows or the concrete structure.
And the windows are massive.
Yeah, I would need to go through my estimate and dissect those out, but just the one was, just under 100,000 square feet.
Okay, sir. Next up is Barbara George.
Hello, gentlemen. And citizens, it's a wonderful opportunity for us to gather together and brainstorm over these things and hopefully come up with a solution that is not only a good answer for today, but is a good answer for the future. And that's the reason why I'm talking today, because otherwise I would sit and tremble in my seat for fear that you would reject what I'm about to say. But past that, I just want to offer that the wisdom of a design is really told over time. And the wisdom of where you locate that design is also told over time. So either it stands the test of time or it doesn't. And then regarding time, how quickly we arrive at that decision and how quickly we move through that decision is also important. There's an observation that I made today for myself. I'm thinking about coming up here. And I was thinking about how I've always been very fast. Once I see something, once I see a possibility and I've made a decision, I want to get there as quickly as possible. And it dawned on me today that sometimes that's not always a good decision. The way I judge how I'm doing is in my peripheral vision. I see people that I know, that I can trust. They're doing well. If they go ahead of me, I think, oh, I'm not doing so well. But if I go ahead of them, I make an assumption that I'm doing better. But that's not necessarily so, because if I'm racing to the edge of a cliff, I get there first. And that thought occurred to me today. And I think it's pertinent to what we're doing. That's why I'm sharing it. My thought is that I want us to take just enough time to make the right decision, that 20 years and 40 years from now, the people who sit in these meetings and discuss what we did go, bravo. They had the courage to make a great decision at a really, really tough time. And they paid the dollars to make that right decision. And whatever sacrifice was necessary, they made it. What a great bunch of human beings. That's what I'd like. And I think we all would. My thought is for us to look again at the location. Because when I look at Goshen and when I back up, the perspective that I see is that there's a gateway to Goshen that is laying fallow. It was the original mile track. It was the Hamiltonian racetrack, and now it sits and it gets wet. And that could be an announcement. Welcome, people, to the county seat, Goshen, New York. It could be a gorgeous property, well developed. There are still 35 some odd acres that are available. You could easily put over 300,000 square feet of development there. It could be new construction. It could be done beautifully. It could announce, welcome to Goshen. It's a thought. I just want you to take it seriously while we're going through this deliberation. Please consider it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Point well said. Maureen Hallahan.
Good afternoon, county legislators, county executive Ed Diana, and the general public. My name is Maureen Hallahan. I'm the president and CEO of the Orange County Partnership, which is the Office of Economic Development for Orange County. I'm here today speaking on behalf of our board of directors. The Office of Economic Development is keenly focused on bringing in new business for Orange County. So we should be your best friend, because every time there's a new business that comes in that we can sort of work with and convince that Orange County is the place for them to land their company, that's our job. And we use a whole host of resources to get that job done. And largely, the Office of Economic Development works with our partners throughout the county. That being said, our board is very focused on economic stimuluses. This building is an economic stimulus for Orange County. I'm not going to go into the details of why it should be built, whether it's a structural disaster, which has been quoted by very knowledgeable people that I've spoken to. But this building has been the source of conversation for decades as being acoustically, not well put together. It's structurally unsound. It's not beautiful to look at. It's not that beautiful location for our county seat. That aside, I have to say that the economic stimulus that would be presented here to us during a very difficult time where we could have these jobs developed and ready to go during these downtimes, it kind of presents us with an opportunity to take a look at a building that's needed to be replaced, an economy that we can get a good project going, people that are out of work, we can put them to work, and we can change something that is sorely needed in Orange County. So I want to say also one other thing. When we court clients and customers, when we bring companies in from outside of the county, outside of the state of New York, we bring them to our county center. And the image, and I hear it all the time, is, what is that? You know, it's just a very different looking building. And then you work your way through the maze, and you meet the officials that you need to meet when you bring a client in. And the image that we have here is very, very important to all of us as we court new customers, as we court new companies, as we bring clients into Orange County. So on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Orange County Partnership, I ask that you act quickly, that you make a decision based on good knowledge and your sound consultants. And I have to also ask the question, if not now, then when? We've talked about it for decades. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Maureen. Mr. Joel Markowitz? And you're on everybody else's camera.
I don't like to do that. I prefer to be on the other side. I had a question with regard to the retention pond that was referred to in the article in the paper as part of the study. But before I do that, since we have Mr. Diana and some legislators in the room, I would like to just take note. If you're serious about having a government of the people, accessible to the people, the county should be streaming these meetings live on the internet through the county's website and recording them so people can access them. It's easy to do, and it's very inexpensive. It's cheap. And that's accessibility. You have a very powerful tool in the internet, use it. Now, with regard to the retention pond, my mother used to say about the village of Goshen, let me just say, my mother was a broker, my mother was involved with the school board for 30 years, I grew up in Goshen, my family's been here since 1929. My mother used to call the village of Goshen the bottom of a soup bowl. And that's true. The mile tract that was referred to used to be a hydrological buffer that absorbed runoff from the Goshen Hills, and in dry periods it would dry out, it would drain, and when we had heavy inundation, it would absorb it. For whatever the reasons, over the past decade or so, no more, almost 20 years, that has started to lake in and has gotten, at times, for years at a time, to the point where it's entirely laked. Recently it has drained for some unexplained reason, the level has fallen, but largely there's no outflow from that area. It's something that I've beaten on the village of Goshen about for easily a decade. Something needs to be done to drain that area. The Rio needs to be opened up. It is clogged. The reason that Goshen flooded during the last storms that we had is that Finance Pond and the Mile Track area breached the banks. There was no place for the water to go. There was no outlet from the bottom of this soup bowl. So regardless of what's done with the building, whether it's rehabbed or rebuilt, something needs to be done to address this problem of drainage in Goshen. I do not understand, and perhaps you can explain it to me, why building a 4-foot deep retention pond gets you any further along the road to having a building that's dry, rather than opening up the drainage and getting that water out. Again, the flooding both at the county center and Greenwich Avenue happened because there are two different branches of the Rio, east and west, and there was no place for that water to go. It seems to me also, let me just throw into the mix, that the number of $10 million was mentioned in the article. I don't know if that's an accurate reflection of fact, but it seems the county would be a long way towards dealing with that if they partnered with the village, towards getting some federal and state money to take on the project, and that would be a win-win situation for everybody, both for the village and the county.
I think Mr. Fusco can answer that because he's talked to us previously about the obstructions downstream that had quite an effect this last storm season.
I think your mother was right. It is a soup bowl, you know, the bottom of the soup bowl. One of the things that we originally looked at right from day one was to open up the channels, bridges and the culverts entirely through Goshen, all the way from the county government center, maybe even a little bit above, you know, all the way under 17, and take it out under 17. It's about, I believe it was 1,600 lineal feet, and it required some taking of properties, you know, a tremendous job. That's where the $10 million came from. It's not out of the question for the village, the town, and the county to get together and try to get some federal funds. You know, Army Corps of Engineers, FEMA, things of that nature. In order to do that, there has to be a hazard mitigation plan to be eligible for these funds. And the funds are very competitive. You know, we can get money under FEMA for the projects that we've had localized problems with in relationship to public assistance. A road washes out, a bridge washes out. But once you get to mitigation, which is to stop this from happening again, the funds get more difficult to obtain because they're competitive. There may be $1 billion, but $1 billion spread over 50 states doesn't leave too much. It becomes very, very competitive. But again, that is the ideal solution, is to get those channels opened up, you know, bigger bridges, bigger culverts, and, you know, we did look at that initially. The second would be diversion, but there's no place to divert it to. As you so stated, the other area of diversion is a big lake on the opposite side, right where the Hamiltonian track used to be. So I'm familiar with it. I went there when I was 5 years old. They still had races, yeah? And so I recall the property back then as well. So it would be a cooperative effort between the village, the town, and the county. And I think it's a worthy project to, you know, look at. But again, it is cost prohibitive to put it into the mix of this project. But if we could get state or federal funds, and that's what it states in here, you know, it is a viable solution. The levee and or retention pond area was developed specifically for a repair of the existing facility. It was not for a new construction. If you were to do a new construction, what you would do is you would go to FEMA with a plan saying that we're going to raise this up, you know, 4 feet high, 4 feet, 6 feet higher, whatever it was, that we're going to build it under the specific floodway recommendations and building codes. We submit that to FEMA before you build. After you build, you resubmit it as a LOI, which is basically changing the FEMA map to show that you're above it, and you don't have to pay flood insurance for that. But under the scenario that we were asked to do is how can we protect the existing structure if it were to be reused. Towards that end, we suggested a berm, right, to stop the Rio Grande from coming into the building area, the parking lot area. And since we were taking that area and that gallonage away from the flood areas, then we had to build a retention pond, and it so happened to be 4 feet was what we calculated, in order to absorb that water so you don't give additional flows downstream and further decimate the village. So it was to hold the water on the property and to protect the building. And that's what the levee system, together with the retention ponds, were for.
Thanks, Al. Also, Mr. Markowitz had a question, Eddie. These reports, the storm damage report and the final report from LaBella, are they on the county website, easily located on the county website? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I got 10 after 5, so I think we'll need a motion to adjourn till 7 o'clock. Katie, Dennis, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, see everyone back here who's interested at 7 o'clock. Mr. Fromager, you would be first up on the agenda.